friends, we're back with American Miscellany, and I'm kind of excited. I don't know, I'm sure you can see that there's a big fat dog ear, kind of a double dog ear on this page. So I think that means that this next essay is going to be really good. It's called Youth and Age, which, yeah, I mean, that could be really interesting, very philosophical. I don't know. This book was published in 1865, of course, called American Miscellany. So it is miscellaneous. And sometimes these essays get pretty deep. You know, they're pretty random, and we never know before we get into them what we're going to find. Hopefully they don't get offensive or anything. I don't know. We'll see. Our previous essay was called The Russian Empire. That was essay 156. We are now on the dog-eared page of 409, working on essay number 157. I gotta wonder, like, how long ago was this dog-eared? You know, was this dog-eared back in 1866 at its first reading? You know, did somebody in 1904 dog-ear it? I don't know. It's great. So, who knows? Maybe that has been unfolded for the first time in a century. Who knows? But let's check it out. Let's see what it's like to unfold page 409 of American Miscellany. Essay number 157, Youth and Age. Human life is a series of developments, and at each new period, some new power is unfolded. New experiences are likewise added, by which means not only are old prejudices frequently corrected, but the errors of our former conduct exposed, condemned, and punished. During the earlier epochs of our existence, we are impelled by dim instincts with such impetuosity as permits small opportunity for reflection. A time, however, at length arrives when the man comes to a pause and reverts his contemplation on the path which he has so far traversed. How much in the haste of the transit has been overlooked and neglected, how much injured and defaced, how many mistakes have been committed, how many wrongs inflicted and suffered. Then follows the usual exclamation, if my time were to come again, how differently would I have acted. But it is too late now. And so the man commences again his swift career, hurrying afresh onward and still onward, pursued by remorse and fear, until he reaches the goal, the grave. This is a good one. Meditating these facts, we are sometimes tempted to believe that, if the prudence of age could be added to the impulse of youth, a great advantage might be gained for the individual. But a difficulty exists against blending them in one and the same person. Happy, however, is the man who benefits by the dear-bought experience of his elders, who, duly influenced by the example of those who are not only aged, but also good and wise, has learned without suffering what to avoid and what to pursue. The counsel of a sage mentor in a parent, grandfather, or a great-uncle cannot fail of being advantageous in many important respects. But on the other hand, there are many counterbalancing disadvantages. The young are enterprising. The old prefer safety to victory, peace to anxiety. In advising youth, old persons accordingly regard rather the dangers to be escaped than the object to be attained. This, in the way of caution, must be well. But if it amounts to coercion, even in the slightest degree, it cannot fail to have evil consequences. If, instead of persuading or guiding judgment, it should substitute a control upon the volition of the young, it will fatally preclude action. Let's try that again. Oh my goodness. If, instead of persuading or guiding the judgment, it should substitute a control upon the volition of the young, it will fatally preclude action, stopping it at its very source. We have not, in such a case, combination, but mere displacement. Young impulse is altogether put aside, and antique prudence takes exclusive possession. The caution of age should be used for the regulation, not for the annihilation, of the impulsive instincts of the ardent and juvenile. Another danger, too, arises. Antique prudence may be obsolete prudence. Circumstances may have so changed as to make it the reverse of prudence at all. The world of commerce affords abundant instances of this, particularly in firms of long standing. A young man of good abilities, full of vigor, becomes, for instance, by right of birth, a junior partner in an old established business, and deems his fortune made. But in a few years the concern, to the surprise of all, sinks and perishes. The surprise is the greater because in the world's estimation the house was always considered particularly safe. It meddled not with modern speculations. It relied on an exceedingly old connection. It did no business that it was not sure of, yet it failed. In fact, though it risked no losses, it achieved no gains, and thus in the end suffered more than it would have done from bad debts or mistaken speculation. Meanwhile, let us imagine, or rather simply state, for we record facts, the position of the junior in the firm. What is it? Anything more distressing could scarcely be conceived. From the first, he was powerless. He found an established method, a system of routine to which he was compelled to adhere. Of an enlightened understanding and an enterprising spirit, he at first attempted innovation, and aimed at the sources of profit of which more youthful firms availed themselves, but was met so uniformly by the fixed habits and rooted prejudices of the older partners that at length he succumbed to necessity, and fell himself, for the sake of peace, into the customary channels. Had he commenced business of his own account, thrown himself entirely on his own energies and resources, and been at once inspired by hope and controlled by prudence, he would in all probability have achieved brilliant success. Youth is proverbially rash, but the aged may show an equally dangerous rashness in holding doggedly to old and worn-out notions. Nothing's changed. Okay. Accustomed to venerate what has existed for generations without challenge, the older class of persons are prone to oppose the slightest attempt at modification, and they suffer accordingly. Many a warning in the course of events is received, yet age is obstinate and persists in the old course, not because it is right, but because it is old. The association of ideas, sympathy, determination of character. The association of ideas, sympathy, determination of character, a sense of pride, while it recognizes the peril, and other like motives, induce age to disregard the symptoms, and inspire it with courage to endure martyrdom, rather than incur the shame of a submission to change. Shame. Yeah. So that's it. Thus, the inveterate controversialist will not confess a proven truth, though convinced. Confess a proven truth, though convinced, falsely apprehending as a defeat what, if candidly acknowledged, would be really a triumph. He wins a ruinous conquest and wears a counterfeit laurel. Sorry, we've got to try that again. Thus, the inveterate controversialist will not confess a proven truth through, though convinced, falsely apprehending as a defeat what, if candidly acknowledged, would be really a triumph, he wins a ruinous conquest and wears a counterfeit laurel. Can we take up a newspaper without being made conscious of the hideous train of disasters which have ensued in various European countries from a rash and unphilosophic persistency in what ought to have been long since modified and accommodated to the spirit of the age? The energies of France, outgrowing the routine of old dynasties, requires a new electoral system, the partnership between her and the sovereign. Such are the evils which flow from the substitution of the merely regulative for the dynamic forces themselves. The last illustration presents the topic under a graver aspect than it was our intention to have considered. Thus drawn, however, to the subject, we cannot refrain from remarking how often we hear that said with pride regarding institutions and systems, which, rightly regarded, should be otherwise spoken of. Thus long has stood this system without one iota of change. Here, as we stood centuries ago, do we yet stand. What was thought and professed then is still thought and professed. Change has often been called for, but never granted, so that here, at least, we have one monument of the past that has never bent to the inconsistent wind of human caprice. If such a thing really exists in the world, which is gravely to be doubted, assuredly this is a questionable boast. The minds of masses of men, being liable to a continual, though it may be slow and imperceptible change, it is impossible for any institution to go on unchangingly without falling out of relation with the world. Its vital is changed for a nominal existence, and so far from deriving strength from its antiquity, it derives weakness and danger. Institutions of this kind may be flattened up to the last day of their existence. May be flattered. Institutions of this kind may be flattered up to the last day of their existence with the external homage which they have been accustomed to receive, and ere 24 hours pass, they may be trampled on as noxious weeds, or quietly consigned to universal forgetfulness. Such catastrophes are clearly traceable to the error of setting up persistency as the law of the world, the real law being change. Man continually changes, and everything that would wish to live with him must consent to change too. Everything must partake of his eternal rejuvenescence, or take the consequences of becoming too old. It is the instinct and tendency of youth to transcend the limits of its actual experience. It presumes, assumes, idealizes, colors from its own rich heart, and outlines and forms of things, and anticipates results with a prophetic power that sometimes induces their realization, but more frequently clothes the distant prospect with those enchantments which hope pictures as belonging to the future. Youth is the season of serial castle building, of countless projects, of boundless aspirations, of infinite possibilities, but a period of limitation at length arrives, of aims more and more positive, objects more definite, an arena more contracted, and labors more special. The man has become the classman from home, the cosmopolite, or the patriot, the general lover, or an attached husband and father, the acquaintance of all, or the friend of a few, the wanderer, or the domestic man whom nothing can tempt from his chimney corner on a winter's evening. Much has been gained, but evidently much has been lost, while the difficulty of blending in on one individuality the advantages of both conditions is freely acknowledged to be great. We are far from holding it to be insuperable. There is much needless waste of wealth, much extravagance of anticipation, much borrowing on the credit of the future, and much excess of all kinds, on which it would be well that youth should be timelessly admonished. Which youth should be timelessly, great word. The youth should be timelessly admonished. With all the regulations of experience, however, it is of equal importance, individually and for social well-being, that the middle-aged and old should cultivate as far as possible youthful feelings. Let not the glory and the freshness of the dream of youth depart with the dream itself. Some glimpses of the vision may surely survive in memory. Once more, exclaims Byron, who would not be a boy? To carry the feelings of childhood into the powers of manhood is, says Coleridge, the prerogative of genius. And what a prerogative it is! Yet it is not one so exclusively that all men may not share in it, each in his degree. We would warn, therefore, the man of middle age from becoming the victim of fixed habits and acquired routine, to the exclusion of new impulses and the pleasure that constantly attends them. Every day is a new day, every hour a new hour. The world is always becoming new, and creation is renewed every moment, so that nature is still in travail with fresh generations. Nothing, if we rightly consider it, is really old, not even age itself. To insist on guiding ourselves by the prejudices of yesterday is merely to resist the progress of growth. Judgment in its maturity has nothing to dread from concession to increased knowledge. Its tendency is to deliberate, to move slowly, to stand still, and it indeed needs the agitation of new ideas, interests, and opinions to preserve it in a healthy state of life and action. An old man of our acquaintance, who is solicitously sought the instruction of new impressions, as others are anxious to reject them, declared to us that, as his understanding becomes more and more illuminated, he felt as if he were growing younger every day. It was, moreover, evident to all that his intellect, owing to the freedom with which he had permitted it still to operate, was constantly to the last receiving a fresh development and expansion. Happy the man thus united to an aged body, who yet owns a young mind. His are at once the security of discretion and the rapture of imagination, this sobered in its tone, and that vivified, and both coexisting in beauty, like light and shade in the picture of a great master.